Okay, I'd like to call our meeting for February 8th, 2024 Finance and Audit to order at 8:30 a.m. We have all members present except for Brian. We have minutes for approval. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Larry, Teresa seconds. Any questions or concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Public comments? Any public
No.
comment? Well, how do you know? They could be.
Look right there.
Well, that doesn't mean they signed up.
No. Oh, sorry.
So none? Okay. Member comments? Okay. On to routine consent agenda. I'd like 7, 8, 7, and 9 pulled. Are there any others?
I have to abstain from 7-1.
7, 1. Okay, so we'll pull it so you can abstain. Any others? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve items 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 10. Teresa, motions. Terry, seconds. We'll go to vote. Teresa?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion on item 7-1.
So moved.
Teresa?
Oh, second.
Terry, seconds. I know you want to abstain, but is there any discussion? No? Okay, we'll go to vote then. Carolyn?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Kelly?
Abstain.
Terry?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries. We're on to items 7, 8, and 7, 9. Would it be okay if we did these together? Does anyone have any issue with that?
No.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion for items 7, 8, and 7, 9. Carolyn and Teresa. Okay, so I pulled these. So I have issues with both of these as far as what's coming forward, but I will allow I don't know if Patrick or whoever wants to come up to I know this has been to 2 other committees already, so almost the whole full board will have heard, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to discuss it first.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for allowing me to do so.
And I'll join. Since they're joined.
You're joined, yeah, no, that's fine. The more the merrier. Come on down.
You wanna scooch
Sit
over?
yeah,
Is there a love seat that we
good,
My apologies to Ms. Meshes and Ms. Greeno. It's going to be a similar presentation to the one that you heard yesterday, but I'll try to be concise because I do know that the board has already heard much of what at least I have to offer on this. But I'll just, I'd like just to start out just a little bit with the state's attorney's track record, if I might. In 2016, we cut 5 full-time employees. We did that without going in front of a committee. We did that without having hearings on it. We did that not part of the budget process. It was irregular. And the reason that we did that is because we wanted to save taxpayers money. And there was a lot of people that told me at the time, don't cut those positions, because if you cut those positions, you're not going to get them back if you need them. And in addition to that, over the last 7 years, one of the things that we did at the state's attorney's office is we brought all of our labor work in-house. So prior to that, all of the labor work that the McHenry County State's Attorney's Office did on behalf of all of the other department heads, as well as all the other departments in McHenry County, was done by private attorneys. And they were charging market rates, and market rates were about $300–400 an hour. They've since gone up, but at the time, $300–400 an hour. What that meant is that the county, through the state's attorney's office, was paying about $300,000 every single year in order to handle all of the labor costs. We brought that in and we put that under a salaried employee, which we pay between $85,000 and $90,000 a year. So we saved a considerable amount of money doing that. Incidentally, one of the attorneys who just left the office was the gal that was handling much of our labor work. And the reason that she left is she's going to Elgin. She left because they're paying her considerably more money. We brought in millions of dollars through the opioid settlement. We've defended the county with regard to a number of civil litigation claims. And we've either settled these claims for pennies on the dollars or had those claims dismissed. We've done that all in-house. Most of the other counties, I would say, in Illinois, when it comes to civil litigation, when the county is being sued by somebody either for personal injury or otherwise, that's also something that we farm out. We have not farmed out any, well, with the exception of one case, we have not farmed out one of those cases. And as a result, we saved the county millions. And I think it's Cheryl's here, especially with regard to labor, but also with regard to some of those. She's seen both private attorneys and she's seen both the McHenry County State's Attorney's Office work. And I think that she'll say that we do a better job than many of the private attorneys, especially in negotiating salaries on behalf of other department heads, but also in defending the county from people who would otherwise want to reach into its pocket. So the point is that I've never been before these committees in the 7 years that I've been state's attorneys asking for this type of irregular, let's say, measure. Never once. And I would say that in terms of the state's attorney's track record, there has never been, I'm sure there are, because there's wonderfully responsible department heads in McHenry County, but we're up there with any department head in terms of running operations as lean as we possibly can and being as fiscally responsible as we possibly can on behalf of taxpayers and on behalf of the county board. So here's the problem. Kane County, Lake County, Will County, DuPage County, those are the other counties that we compete with, not only for young talent coming out of law school, but those are the other counties that we compete with in terms of retaining our employees. So very oftentimes employees will jump from one county to the other, and there's a small group of people that we're trying to attract out of law school to come in and handle some of the lower level positions. They've been hemorrhaging people. And over the last 3 years, I've probably spent, as I was telling Mr. Scala, I've probably spent about 30% of my time by hook or by crook, doing everything in my power. There is not a single attorney in McHenry County that's eligible to work at the state's attorney that I have not talked to. There's not a law school expo that I haven't gone to. There's not a phone call that I haven't made, trying to do everything in my power to maintain our staffing at or near full level. And we've been successful, and so we've had this sort of patchwork that we've been able to maintain more so than many other counties. And so last year at this time, we were at about full staff, and that's in the face of withering attrition in the state's attorney's office, and which is what other state's attorney's office faces. I was down at a conference in December, and every single state's attorney was in awe at the fact that we, at the time, were fully staffed. We've since lost 2 employees. So it's been incredibly difficult for state's attorneys' offices over the last 3 years since COVID to attract good people as well as to maintain its employees. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is we have sort of cultural forces which have changed the perception that many young attorneys, especially the ones that we're trying to attract, have with regard to doing work with law enforcement and with regard to doing prosecutions. So it's not nearly as attractive to young attorneys as it was. In addition, we have market forces that have rocketed up wages for attorneys. And not just that, but a lot of times, especially for young attorneys, we were competing for people who would otherwise go the corporate route. And one of the advantages that we have is we could offer sort of a work-life balance. Gen X, or I should say the millennials as well as Gen Z, are not putting up with working 80-hour weeks anymore. And so what much of the corporate world has done is they've reduced the number of hours that they're requiring attorneys to work, but they've maintained the wages because they want to maintain the best and the brightest attorneys coming out of law school. So we don't necessarily even, or the advantage that we have in terms of, let's say, a work-life balance has dissipated. And then in addition to that, like a lot of people now are able to work from the comfort of their own homes. And so we've lost a number of attorneys to jobs where it's like, hey, I have 3, it's because we employ a lot of young people. And I joke sometimes that we're almost like a baby factory at the state's attorney's office because we employ a lot of people in their late 20s and early 30s who at the time are having children. And many of them would like to be home spending time with their kids, and we've lost a number of attorneys to that as well. Well, we can't do that. We have to work hand in glove with law enforcement. We got to be standing on our own 2 feet in front of courtrooms in this county every single day, fighting for justice and fighting on behalf of victims and fighting on behalf of the people. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder with victims. We have to be there sitting next to them and comforting them and offering them the services that we can when they're in here talking about how they've been sexually abused, or when they're in here talking about And when we're trying to prepare them to testify in front of a group of 12 strangers with regard to the worst, most horrific, painful, private thing that's ever happened to them. So we need to be here. And the job of the state's attorneys is a hard job, but it's not just a hard job. It's such a hard job that it's a job that there's only a small group of people that want to do it. How many young lawyers do you know that want to look at child pornography? Okay, how many lawyers do you know that want to immerse themselves every single day in the very worst things that have happened in a community and then fight for every single inch in a system which very often is set up to protect the rights of a defendant? It's frustrating, it's hard, it's emotionally taxing. It creates an enormous amount of emotional distress. There's times in the tenure of any single state's attorney, there's times when it's just like, look, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I have to go home because this is just too much for me. And you know what? I got to take the rest of the week off. And you know what? Maybe I got to go and help myself to some type of professional services because this is weighing on me and having an effect on my life. And that's who we want to attract. We don't just want to attract those people that are willing to do it. We want to attract the very best possible people. People who have a sense of fairness, people who have a sense of justice, people who have empathy, people who have compassion. So the overall point is that it's a very small group of people that we're competing with. And if we cannot at least match the wages of those counties to the east by 20 minutes, to the south by 20 minutes, or otherwise, in terms of a salary, we're not going to be able to get the best and brightest people who want to do the job. And worse than that, we're going to be losing people to those counties. I love the people that I work with. I hope they have a similar affection to me. But at the end of the day, many of these are bottom line decisions that people have to make, and they have to do ultimately what's best for them and their families. And so if Lake County is saying, look, come over, do the same job that you're already doing, we're fully staffed, so you're not in overdrive as you are in McHenry County, and we're gonna pay you 20%, 30% more, it's an easy decision for the vast majority of people. And so we've already lost, we're down 3 positions, we've recently filled 1 of them. So we're taking on water. If we continue to take on water, we're only gonna take on water faster, which is the point, because we're going to be asking people to do more with less. And the more stressed you are, the more unhappy you are in a professional space, the less likely you're gonna be to wanna stay there. So if the idea is like, look, this is irregular and it wasn't part of the budget process, I agree. I understand that the budget process is incredibly important. That's how you guys do your job, and that's how you guys maintain flat budgets or budgets at the lowest possible cost. I appreciate that and I respect that. This is an irregular situation, and as a result of that, we're asking for an irregular response. If the idea is that, okay, look, like, we don't want to create the precedent where we're giving out emergency funds to the state's attorney's office in this case, because then other departments are going to come forward and are going to ask for these types of monies, I can appreciate that too. I would just ask that you evaluate this and any other claims that come forward on the merits. And I would caution that if the idea is like, look, we have this ironclad rule where it's got to go through the budget process or it's got to go through this other type of process, that's creating a precedent too. And for me, now looking at it, if there's, let's say, in 2 years, if let's say a lot of this dissipates and cultural forces change quickly or workforces change quickly, and now I have an accordion file of resumes as opposed to the 2 or 1 resumes that I get for the job postings that I have now, and there's positions that I can cut, I'm gonna say to myself, there's no way I'm cutting those positions because I need an emergency reservoir myself, because in my time of need, when in my best judgment, I come forward to the county board and ask for help, they're not gonna be there for me. So my understanding, and Cheryl, I'm sure, can speak to this better than I can, is that this can be absorbed with the current budget that we have. I think over the last 7 years, I've established a track record of not asking for things that the state's attorney's office doesn't need. This is important. I wouldn't be asking for it if it wasn't important. So I respectfully have petitioned this committee for these funds. Thank you all for your consideration.
I think the piece that is important is we're getting ready to do a compensation study. We're in the midst of a compensation study right now. It's out there. So back in October, when we were saying, what positions are you being challenged with recruiting? Where do you think that we're not matching the market? At that time, this was not an issue. So therefore, those positions were not raised and were not put into the compensation study. These changes in the other communities happened after October. So it missed that process. So when Patrick's office came forward, I did a quick compensation study with these other communities, and what he's presenting is the mid-market of these other communities that we compare ourselves with and compete with. As far as the funding, I think Carrie can speak more to that, and where the money comes from. But it would have been part of the compensation study had we known that the other communities were doing these big increases.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the public defender does a similar job as the assistant state's attorney, just on the other side of the table, I guess is the way that I'd characterize it.
Which is why he didn't want you sitting up.
Yeah, I do want to say
But we're drawing from the same labor pool, and I've seen these same problems in the years that we've been recruiting people, and it seems to have dried up. The attorneys have the same qualifications, responsibilities, and duties from a different perspective from the other side, but it's a necessary side. And that's why we brought the resolution that we brought because we didn't want to come in later after Patrick had already come through and say, oh, we were going to play catch up. We wanted the board to know that, to consider it at the same time, a matter of transparency.
That's fine. So so thank you both for presenting, and you and I did talk on the phone. So that is part of the challenge that I see with the resolutions coming forward. I believe that the state's attorneys and the public defenders' jobs are not easy, difficult jobs, and quite honestly, you guys are doing a fabulous job. I mean, I am very proud to say that we have an excellent judicial system, not just the judges, but the lawyers, and that whole, I'll say the whole building over there does a great job for the county. And so this is difficult as far as the resolutions go, because naturally we want to give you the support that you need. You talked about that through the budget process, that's one of the things that we do with department heads and elected officials. We talk to them about, not padding their budget, about doing with what you need. And then if there are emergencies that come up, great, come to us at that point in time. I guess the thought process and what has been the paradigm for the years that I've been here is that when an emergency comes up, it's perhaps I don't want to say a big emergency, but it's a small little thing that they need in order to run their office or personnel wise. This is a very large ask, I guess. And so to have that outside of the budget process where we can look at everything as a totality of how things get impacted becomes a much more difficult hill to climb. As you have seen, for the last several years, the whole budget discussion that we've had on the board floor has been a very difficult discussion. It's not been, it's counting votes literally to try and pass something. And, so you have the side that says, we don't want to raise CPI, we don't want to raise taxes, and therefore, we don't want to approve increases. We have the other side that says, hey, we need to take as little taxes as possible, but we do need to take, some extra CPI for taxes. And so that's been the budget battle that we've been having for the last couple of years. It's a public battle, and it's okay. That's how government gets, run. So, when you look at these resolutions put together, it becomes difficult because it's A, not in the budget, so it becomes an emergency appropriation. B, it's, asking for money that is a reoccurring expense, and that's always been my big thing. Is it a one-time fixed cost or is it a reoccurring expense? The reoccurring expenses become much more challenging because that's something year after year after year after year we're gonna continue to pay. Salaries in my whole lifetime have never gone down. Maybe they stayed stagnant, but they never go down. I mean, they're always there, and typically, like you're seeing right now, are going up and going up significantly. And so it becomes challenging to work on something outside of the budget in order to approve these resolutions. You know, right now the money's coming out of fund balance, but it can't continue to come out of fund balance. It has to come out of somewheres, which means it gets budgeted the following year. But, you know, now we get back into that battle all over again and say, okay, well, board, you know, you approved these emergency appropriations throughout the year for reoccurring expenses, and now the budget doesn't work, and so now we need to raise taxes again to fund the things that were already approved. And so it then becomes a battle all over again with the same board members about how do you pass a budget. So it becomes difficult. So there's a side of me, the sympathetic side, that says, hey, we need to do what we need to do to support your offices, and you know, because we want to retain employees. That's one of the things that the board has been very clear about, is that we want to support, you know, our union and non-union employees and the work that they do. But on the other hand, there's the flip side of it, which is the finance side, which is this committee, which is now responsible for looking at everything as a whole. And so that's why I have, you know, challenges with this. You know, when I talked to Carrie about it, you know, part of my other frustration was I didn't feel like she was a part of the process to try and come up with a solution for it as far as the payment goes. And she, you know, she wasn't aware of this until the resolution was being written. And that's also problematic for me. So the person who's in charge of finances for the county doesn't get consulted at all until basically a resolution's being written. That's problematic just because how do you fit something into a budget and understand the consequences of that without understanding the finances of the county? So there's that side of it. So future, you know, Carrie needs to be part of the process from, you know, whenever it's determined that you got an issue. So those are my thoughts and comments. You know, if I was in one of the other committees that heard this, I'd be, yeah, this is a yes vote for me because it is something that's needed. But in finance, it's, to me, I now have to look at the financial side and the financial ramifications of saying yes. And so that becomes more difficult. So those are my comments. I'll open up to the other board members that have questions or comments.
I don't care who goes first, Kelly.
I have to echo a lot of what Chairman Scala said. I do have well, let's start with this. I appreciate everything you guys do. You work hard, you do a lot of things that are difficult for our county, and I appreciate that. Definitely things that I could not do, and I'm not trained anyway, but things I could not do, so thank you. And I understand the salary situation. I also see this as outside the budget process, and if this was just passed in November, December by other counties, I don't think it's going to hurt us that much if we wait till we pass it through the budget. This is coming outside the budget cycle, and first of all, I have a problem with deferring capital projects because it sounds like that's what's going to happen. This money is going to come from it's part of the capital budget. That's what was said in law and government. And also that I wonder how it's going to be funded going forward. Chairman Scala said it perfectly. We get to these budget discussions and we have people who don't want to increase taxes at all. Well, if you include the total increase in salaries, it's almost $600,000. That's a huge chunk that we would be adding to our budget. So you would both be asking for an increase in your budget when it comes to the new year. How is that going to play out? I mean, how are we going to pass an increased budget? I don't know. I don't know. So I am a no vote on this. I want it to come through the budget process. I want to see the increases, but I think we need to do it the way we always have been doing it through the budget.
I was wondering if anybody here was at the difference between the law and government, which did not pass it, and the admin services, which passed it 5-0. I guess I'm a little curious in what the difference in the discussion was at each of those meetings. Was somebody at both those meetings that
It
said
wasn't
something?
at both.
I was at Law and Government.
Would you want to share that at all? or-
Well, it was tie. It was 3-3.
At law and government, yes, but then it was 5-0 at admin services, and I wondered what tilted the block, and one of the person that was on both committees changed his mind. And I didn't have time to learn, I did not have time to listen to the admin services meeting, which was yesterday, I guess. And I was wondering if there's,
I'd be glad to speak to that.
if you would, that's, yeah.
And I had a question. Yesterday, we had asked that the payroll burden be put into the resolution. The 423,165, has that been updated with the payroll burden for today? Anybody? Got the number on the payroll burden?
The benefits?
Payroll burden, yes.
IMRF and
That
Social
includes
Security.
benefits.
After the discussion, we are going to recommend amending the resolution. To
Well,
include
can you just throw out the number now, just so we
State's
have that?
attorney is 57,847 for FICA and IMRF, and public defender is 17,770.
I'm sorry, Carrie, could you repeat those, please?
Yes, state's attorney is 57,847, and public defender is 17,770.
What are these numbers? So this includes all of our benefits?
FICA and IMRF.
Medical, I mean, everything?
Medical
Those
won't
don't change.
Okay, well, those won't change. Okay.
Because we're not actually increasing.
Okay, okay, alrighty, good. So then basically, just so that we've got,
Those are not general fund numbers, those are other funds.
those are payroll burden, the payroll burden. So when you usually put in numbers for a cost of an added head count, you put in the payroll burden, not the pay rate. It's significantly different when you're paying it out, guys. You know this, right, Cheryl? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what Peter's saying is, yes, but they don't all come from the same bucket.
Great.
So,
They're the same, it's an expense. It's
Yes.
the actual expense.
Yes.
Okay, so we need to always have those numbers, the actual expense, and not have them split out, okay? Just for the record, we have to make decisions. We have to know what we're making a decision about. So we're talking roughly, 480, 490 for the state's attorney, and just a little under 150 for the public defenders. So we're talking a total of 640. Okay, that's what we're talking this year, and then ongoing with whatever increases in the budget. Okay, with that being clarified, going back to the two, and I believe it was Member Kunkel, Board Member Kunkel, who voted one way in law and government and then changed his vote yesterday. So here, and this happens to be my life's work, okay? Looking at recruiting, retention, talent, turnover cost, and I would say conservatively that a turnover cost on average is like $200,000 based on the vacancy, getting the work replaced, and then recruiting and hiring. Isn't that a good number?
yeah, depending on what the position is.
Yeah, I mean, just on average.
Multipliers.
So when he has a vacancy, we're absorbing that cost. It may not come in a cash outlay, but it's real. Backing up for just a second, I want to start out by saying that one of the greatest threats right now in the United States of America, in Illinois, in McHenry County, is our health and safety. Okay, we all know that. We hear it on the news every single day. We have a state's attorney's office. I'm sorry, I cannot speak to the public defenders. No exposure. But that is arguably not only the best in the state, but one of the best in the nation, okay? They've done this by refining their work, attracting talent. This is where you want the best intellectual property. So being in this industry or a recruiting industry, whenever you look at talent pools, and I thought that Patrick, you did an excellent job of explaining what's happened to the labor pool and what is there available to even recruit from, and then who wants to do this, because this is a head and heart type of a position. And people are not doing this job for the money, but when they can do the same thing for more pay, they are going to be pulled away. Many times, McHenry County suffers the sucking of our intellectual property to Wisconsin, Iowa, Indiana, and fairly menial positions, general labor, and then you go into very limited talent pools like skilled trades, technical engineering, these types of things. They're looking for quality of life. We have a higher cost of living here. And so if we do not match these rates, these would go into effect of July 1st, I believe, if we vote this through. We are already behind.
No, these would go into impact as soon as we pass.
Oh, it goes as soon as we pass it,
Yeah.
there's no delay.
Compensation study, if would have been part of the compensation study, it would have been in July.
Oh, got it.
But it's
Oh, I
outside.
see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
it's
That's where that
outside.
came in. Okay, that was from yesterday. That's where I got that. Okay, so this goes in and we need to get it in place. If we wait until next year, he's going to have a smaller department. It's going to take much more work to get these people back because there's not a good labor pool to pull it from. Okay, that being said, that this is something that would be a very wise thing to do. One of the issues, the other side of it is where does the money come from? And this is where I look at it as the administrative responsibility to explain to us whether it's non-departmental funds, whether it's general funds, where would this come from? What money has been allocated to those funds that we lump in together? It's not just a big magic pool, pile of money that we reach into and pull out. Those monies were put there for something. And my understanding is in the budgeting process, we often take departments and we may say 1 or 2% under payroll, current payroll or whatever, and then put it in these funds for fluctuations that might happen depending on the size of the budget. So that is administration's responsibility to explain to us what is the money that we're taking out of these funds or non-departmental funds, what are they there for? And then how might that could impact the budgeting process for next year so that the money is available. Will it affect our reserve accounts? Highly unlikely because of the amount that we have and what we're earning on interest. And then we can go through the budgeting process next year. If we wait until that time, then we're going to be in a poor position, as far as our intellectual property and the work that it would take to regain and retain. So then the question goes, and this is where Carrie gets to shine and now explain to us what those funds that have been put into the pile of money, what they had been earmarked for that will not threaten the fiscal integrity of the county. Go, Carrie.
Okay, so I think there's a little confusion about budget versus fund balance. So the money you're talking about in non-departmental, we look at, throughout the budget process, we look at all general fund positions and hold some of that money back, and that's per the budget policy, because especially in the large departments, you can guarantee there's going to be vacancies. We even hold back some of the merit, and that's more so you guys have control over some of the personnel. So if a department has a lot of open positions, they have available budget, that maybe was not for the intended use. So we hold back 2% from the large departments, 1% from the small ones. But I hesitate to say that we can use it for something like this because it's very deliberate. We know the payroll expense for state's attorney is this. We take 2% and hold it back. But at the end of the year, if they need that 2%, we move it back into their budget. So they're not technically over budget. We're just kind of reserving the funds for things that happen throughout the year when you're trying to stay within policy but still be able to react to an organization with 1,300 employees. So
Take a breath. And, most years we finish the fiscal year in the black. And this is one of the reasons why, is we allow the board to kind of control some of those dollars on the perimeter, because we end up usually not spending quite all of the money that's out. And Ms. Greeno is exactly right. That is a portion of money that could go toward this, but that is not what we are proposing today. What the resolution as drafted is to take from the reserves. You have a very strong reserve position, right? And that's to all of your credit, that we have a strong reserve position. There's a zillions in the stretch. There's many variables that will impact that reserve as we go through the year. Lots of different revenues are going to impact the reserve. One of those impacts is going to be the Lake County jail money. We built the budget without that in there because we didn't know what was going to happen. It is happening now, at least for a time, so that's going to be a positive impact. We budgeted more money in chemists. That's going to be a positive impact. Don't know if we hit it right or not. We're going to try and use some additional ARPA monies we'll talk a little bit about for the election service. That's going to be a positive impact. But this will be a negative impact on the reserve. But how is it all going to wash out? The question, or the point earlier, at long government, it was suggested that capital funds could be impacted by this decision. Could be. We don't know. We got to wait. We have a lot of projects that are going to be bid out. It's a 5-year capital plan. We're only approving 1 year at a time. But if this had a negative impact, on that capital fund, we would have to measure which projects might be deferred. I don't know that that's going to happen. Again, there's so many variables that are going to impact that strong fund reserve that you have. But what we are proposing today is to draw on your fund reserve. To use this. That's why we're using an emergency appropriation. That's why we're requiring our 2/3 vote to access those fund reserve dollars and not draw on undesignated monies in the non-departmental line. If Patrick was here asking and Mark for 1 or 2 adjustments, amounting to several $1,000s, not $600,000. I would say we can absorb that, and we probably wouldn't do an emergency appropriation because, as we noted, there's always a little bit of dollars in there to absorb these things. But this is a significant move. I think we need to be honest with ourselves and do an emergency appropriation if this is what the board wants to do. There's lots of variables, and we're early in the year, and we're gonna move through the year and adjust. And Adam's going to build that next 5-year capital plan with more knowledge about how our fund reserves are going to be a year from now.
And what is the fund reserve balance that we'd be drawing this from?
The excess reserve is projected at $6 million. So that's over the 6-month.
Okay. And I'm sorry to keep, is it okay if I?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay, part of our strategic plan is that each of the committees are supposed to be looking at the county functions under their purview for duplicative efforts, efficiencies. That hasn't, we've been here a year, over a year in our roles, and that hasn't even started. I keep meaning to bring that up, and I forget, so. So those are things that before the budget process, committees can look at this and start looking at, to be prepared for what's coming up in the next budget cycle. And if they've identified the money in the fund reserve for now, then it's our work, to look ahead in the budget. I mean, having an increase in payroll doesn't mean that we increase the budget. We might make cuts in other areas where we see headcount that's no longer necessary. Do we need roles in the health department for pandemic services that don't exist? Looking at things, like what are the different payrolls and what are we paying for? Just to make sure that everybody understands that we're doing things on purpose and that we're being responsible with tax money.
Teresa.
So yesterday in the admin services, I had supported this measure based on what's already been stated about the fact that we need to keep our intellectual talent here and that there are losses to losing people and having to keep filling these positions, right? The other thing is I think that it is I don't think we should delay capital projects because of this, or say that they're a threat because of this, because of the fact that we have, Carrie says accurately, it's $6 million over our policy reserve, which means we have $6 million extra than we have as policy. So the 28,000 is not going to affect, should not affect our capital plan. And definitely we need to make sure that we're keeping a strong system between the public defender and the state's attorney's office. So that is why I support, I mean, I do acknowledge that we don't want to be loose with our policies and give a sense that people can come in all year long asking for money, although in my time on the board, that does happen all year long. It feels we often have someone coming in saying we need an adjustment. But that's part of the way our county has created these bonds with departments. Like we talk about the fact that we are a better connected county department-wise than other counties, and I think that's the reason, right? I look around the other departments and like, yes, if they can, there isn't a combative relationship, and so I don't have a problem with this appropriation, and I would argue that we do not need to even threaten the capital plan. So.
Well, I was gonna allow Carolyn
No,
to
no,
speak.
go ahead.
Well, you haven't spoken yet, so.
Well, no, I actually got a chance to speak in long government, and I'm taking all this in, figuring it out. Very compelling argument, and I think that you really brought it all together more yesterday and today probably than what we had in long government, so I really appreciate the extra work that went into that. I don't think there's any question that something needs to be done, and I think everybody agrees with that. And I think the question becomes, does it need to be part of the budget process? Should it be part of the mid-year compensation review? Do we need to do it now? The budget is, it's not something that we treat very loosely. The idea that people keep coming back in here, and this is not to what you said here, right, but that people come back in and they want emergency appropriations and blah, 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 that this comes up. It's a nimble document. It has to be. We can't anticipate everything that we have to do. It's not like at home where you can say, okay, well, we absolutely cannot go out tonight because we need to put this aside because we agreed we'd put this much money aside for our, car payments or whatever. Things happen, we serve the public, so sometimes things are gonna happen that are gonna be an expense that we didn't anticipate. Likewise, something that we thought was gonna happen didn't. Now we have reserves. We should always be budgeting that we're in the black. Having the reserves and being in a strong position is a good thing, not a bad thing. And what I'm hearing is that this mid-year review for compensation is done in anticipation of the budget, but doesn't necessarily coincide. We do a mid-year adjustment on salaries. It's not this thing that a salary adjustment doesn't take place until the next budget year. This is really only taking it a couple of months early, and it's already been identified that the numbers for the external comparisons are good, they're accurate. This is what we're facing, this is the reality. And, I don't know how to run a state's attorney's department. I mean, this is a very complicated thing, and if other communities are doing something, after our budget process, that's not something we have control over, and this is a very real problem. And a comment was made about how much it costs for turnover, the amount of money that goes into training and that goes out the door if they leaves quickly. So there's a huge cost to that. That's not even in these figures at all, right? So it's an added cost when we lose somebody. I do think we have a problem with trying to get a budget passed every year. This idea that we can never raise taxes, and nobody wants to raise taxes, and everybody comes in with the idea that we're gonna be as efficient as possible. But to a comment that you said, I don't want people coming, and I felt this way as a trustee, I never want people coming and asking for their budget to be something that they think we will pass. I need them to come in and with a budget that they need, okay? Sometimes the number of nitpicking that would go on about the smallest thing is like, that's not our thing, right? I don't want them coming forward with this project because they know we'll pass it, but not this project, even though that's the one they need, right? That's very important to me. So to your point, then going forward, you need to know that we're gonna be there for you if things change. And I think we should be, and I think we have to have a more we try to have a more robust discussion about how we're gonna handle this as county board members, and the willingness to understand that sometimes we do need to make some adjustments to make sure that we are funding our service properly. And the big part of that, we always say it, is one of the biggest problems we have is retaining and attracting our talent. It's a huge cost. It's an ongoing cost. It's not a one-time cost, and that's why the tax base becomes so important and so difficult. So I understand the, why this is always a problem every single year. But this is something that we need to do. I said yes in long government, and I haven't changed my mind.
Okay. Second bite at the apple, anyone?
Sure. Well, I don't know that I ever completely got my question about the discussion at law and government and admin. Other than maybe, Peter, are you saying that at law and government, there was a fear of losing the capital projects and that was sort of the swing, or?
It was outside the budget. That was the main argument, was it was coming outside the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at admin services, not a concern or less of a concern, or?
I mean, I would say, and Terry probably would maybe agree, is that the members yesterday at admin services were more focused on making sure that we are doing what we can do now to keep and attract talent and not lose out, like it's an opportunity cost, right? So if you currently have 2 openings, but your fear is you're going to have even more openings the more this goes on. You are fully staffed, but there's always a concern, right? There's loss in having to attract new employees constantly. And there's also a loss in having to, my concern that I mentioned yesterday was that I think that the judicial system is, when it's said that the system's not fair, I think you see less fairness when you have newer, new talent because they're too by the book, and they don't have the life experience or the to have a sense of where where fairness lies. So that was it. I thought is that we were more focused on making sure we're keeping who we have and we get the best talent, and we're not losing inadvertent costs by having to retrain and attract.
Yeah, thank you. I do have a couple of more, I guess. Does the new voting center that we just passed, does those funds come out of this same? Okay.
So right now, yes, the way it was approved last month, but we have been working with Bronner to see if we can move that to an ARPA expense.
Okay.
And it's a strong possibility. They haven't said yes yet, so it would be something else for you guys to consider.
Okay.
If we can move it there.
So there is a possibility there.
I think it's a all but certainty that a large portion of it, right? Let's put it that way, so.
Okay. No, yeah,
We can talk more about it when we do the advancement.
You like the possibility, but you're not committing to it.
No,
Well,
I'm committing to about 2/3 of it.
Okay. No, that's fine.
I would, well, and again, not germane to the discussion, we can discuss it later, but I would be curious how they're twisting ARPA to say this is
Not
ARPA.
twisting.
Okay, that's a different discussion, I guess.
Interpreting.
So,
It's not a stretch. The mail-in ballot process is a tremendous component of all this process.
Social
And that's a direct
distancing.
result of COVID.
Yeah.
so the jail the sheriff's contract, the jail contract, we know that's up and running now for the most part.
Yes.
There's got to be, when we're considering building that into the budget or not building in the budget, there was always just the big question marks of whether that was going to work out, not work out.
There was a question mark in December that Lake County Board did not pass it.
Correct.
And
Where are we at now with that? I mean, at this point, we should be able to have some anticipation for funds coming in for that for this year, right? Is there a number you can put on that, or?
So
Okay, Sandy.
they've been at 150.
Come on up.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to put a number on
So I think
it.
they're gonna be sending out an invoice for January soon. And
So we
then-
have,
Okay,
we sent, we just invoiced for 136,000. January, if you remember, it wasn't all 150 at once, so we had to stagger them in, so this isn't what we'd be fully invoicing Lake County, but as of right now, we do anticipate 150 being pretty consistent, for at least 6 months.
6 months?
That's the important part. As I've said a few times, I think this money dries up without some action of the Lake County Board. There's only so much contractual.
This is where the sheriffs did it themselves, there was no actual
Right.
contract.
Right.
It's working, but it could, if they reverse their decision, they could force it, maybe possibly out.
I believe that the Lake County Sheriff is going to need help from the Lake County Board to transfer monies around for this to go for the whole 12 months.
Okay, but we got 6 months here, possibly 150, and the net on that is
Yeah, that's
100,
the important part,
wasn't
is
it
what are the expenses?
2/3 about, somewhere in there?
So, we just billed the first invoice, and I've sat with Carrie, are you addressing that in your?
I know you guys are stealing all my thunder for the rest.
That's right. So there are
We need to know
small
where the money's at for this.
expenses that we've done, so we bought mattresses, we had already bought, we call them textiles, you can call them uniforms, whatever, for them. But we're gonna be able to show what our expenses are for healthcare, food, et cetera, with invoicing. Full invoice will be next month, really for the February, to give you a really good idea of what this looks like.
Okay,
So by then you'd be able to like, in the past, we've talked like net dollars per.
Yeah, and I believe we're looking at providing monthly
Yes.
reports.
Right.
And you're gonna have, I mean, you're gonna have some one-time fixed costs up front, which are gonna kind of skew the numbers initially. But relatively speaking, you can kind of extrapolate out, so.
Net it out, yeah.
so our best guess number may be $100 person, 6 months, $600,000, sort of.
What's gonna be,
Which one he wants to make some, for some reason I was thinking the expenses were approximately a third. I think that's a high estimate, but
I haven't really broken it down by month, so
No, yeah, that's about right. I think we were in the high 20s, like 29 or something like that out of 100 expense.
But we have to put in transportation. Probably about 1.6.
so transportation's included in that 100?
But in our cost.
1.6, or that, but that's the,
6 months.
and net, but that's the gross,
Net.
that's net, 1.6, okay.
I
Yeah.
argue it's gonna be a little more than that, but.
Well.
I would say you're probably gonna net per month about $250,000
Per month.
per month is what I'm just doing.
So
now.
we're a substantial amount of money that we hadn't had built into the budget, that's all I was looking for. That's good, I'm looking at my rest of my notes here. I guess in closing, I'd say, in agreeing with Chairman Scala, the resolution could have been handled a little better, and certainly be nice if it was part of the budget process, but I don't know if I can make that part of my critical decision at the end of this when it's all over with. From the financial member of this committee, it's sort of a no because it didn't go through the budget process. But it's here and it's now, so I think I'm gonna have to go along with it. That's the end.
You done? Okay. Anyway, Kelly?
So a couple things. First, is there any way, instead of having it effective as soon as we pass it, that you just combine it in with the other compensation study? So June 1st is when those others? July 1st is? I mean, doesn't that make more sense?
We talked about that, whether we would just bring it in as part of the full compensation study, or was there an emergency? And when I was talking with Patrick and his staff, the potential of losing people between now and July was enough of a concern to bring it forward now.
We've been redlining as a staff for months now, and so that's the concern. That's really the concern right now, and there are openings in these other counties as well.
Because I just worry that if this gets passed now, that those people who say they don't want to raise taxes, then we're in a bind in November. We're in a big bind, so that's all.
Carolyn?
Well, I was just gonna, I was gonna follow up on that, but I think that in terms of what we would be, you would be asking for either now or July 1st, probably wouldn't change significantly, or is it likely to change significantly? I guess my question being, to wait till then doesn't seem like, and we're gonna learn anything new or significantly new that would change the numbers.
Their numbers I don't believe would change, because all of the communities we compared with just made their changes. I don't see them changing again.
Okay.
So I don't see their numbers changing for the attorneys.
Okay, because that was a thought too, was to do it through, do it through like the regular compensation. But if nothing's changing, I don't see the risk in waiting.
Anything else by committee members?
Yeah, I'm sorry. One more time. So this goes, when it goes to the full board, it's already passed admin services, so it'll go on the consent agenda, old business. If we fail it or pass it here, how is it gonna be brought to the board?
I think it should go on new and unfinished business because it didn't
It's
pass
got
one
fail
of the
and
committees.
pass.
Huh?
It already has one fail and has one
Right.
pass.
So it would go on new and unfinished.
Okay.
So I guess is the committee in agreement at least that if it does not pass the full board, that we definitely want this included in the normal non-union compensation study that is already in process? That would be wrapped into that. Can we all at least agree on that portion of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So if it doesn't receive the 12 votes that it needs at the full board meeting, definitely fold it in. And I understand it's already in process, but please include that as part of this. So that it, to offer that support. Yes, it's 4 months later than perhaps what you want, but at least it's in process as far as what we are normally doing. Okay, anyone else have comments? Okay, well then let's go. Is it okay if we take both of these together? I mean, it was motioned together, but I just want to make sure that.
We had the amendment on the benefits.
Oh, what do you want? What's your amendment?
To add in emergency appropriation for FICA and IMRF, add to it.
Yeah, the payroll burden.
Okay, so do you have language for that, or do you?
I can add language.
Well, I don't feel comfortable making an amendment.
Is it very,
Well, no, I don't feel comfortable making an amendment without language that I can look at and the board and the committee. I mean, you can still add it to the agenda. When it gets reposted for the full board for our committee of the whole, then just add it in there because it was already added in by another committee, it sounds like.
No.
It wasn't?
No.
It was requested at
It was
admin
requested,
for
okay.
today.
Okay.
wouldn't the amount just be, so like, I'm looking right now at the public defender one. So when it says be it further resolved by this county board of McHenry County, Illinois, that emergency appropriation in amount of, currently says 130, aren't you just adding the 17,770 or is it not the same?
Yes, we would increase that number, and then in the budget lines, it comes from two different funds, so we would just add a line to increase IMRF and pull from that fund balance, and then increase FICA and pull from that fund balance.
It's just changing the amount and then itemizing it down below.
Yes.
So if the committee wants, we can make an amendment that the FICA and the IMRF get added to the resolution and the corresponding accounts that the money would be coming out of and not use specific information. Because we don't have specific information in front of us as far as language.
Okay.
So we can just make that motion as a general that advising staff to do that.
And could we, instead of using FICA and IMRF, use the term any additional payroll burden, just in case something else is uncovered that they're going to be including?
That's fine.
Okay, just gives you
Yeah.
guys leeway to make sure.
That's fine. Okay, so would someone like to make that motion?
I would.
Okay, Terry makes that motion. Is there a second? Teresa seconds that. Do you have an understanding of what the committee is asking you to modify? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And that was for both
That's
resolutions.
the resolution change.
Okay, so we have a adjusted resolutions. Any other discussion before we go to vote? Okay, we'll go to vote then. Larry?
Yes.
Kelly?
No.
Terry?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And myself, no. Motion carries. Okay, you're onto the board. You do need 12 yes votes out of whoever's present. So that's the next hill you have to challenge. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, advance McHenry County. I guess we get a preview of what's happening. Terry. You can come sit down in these comfy chairs over here.
So we emailed this out to you guys, we just wanted to go through it. In some of the committees I was looking at this past cycle, some of these topics came up, and so this is more, we wanted to give you guys an update, our usual update, but then also clarify a few comments, because I think, you know, from where you're sitting, you see things kind of coming in one at a time. And so to look at it, kind of remind you guys back to the whole picture, we thought would be helpful. So this diagram that Carrie showed.
It's a flow chart.
Well,
This was Hartman's idea. He's
yeah.
he's in Rome this morning, so he's missing this.
This is our whiteboard.
This is the whiteboard, yeah.
Yes. So we have the total ARPA distribution, then we have what was broken out for public projects, and then our county projects, the total amounts, and then you can see what's approved thus far. And then you kind of see over to the side the interest that we've earned through January on this money. So then the county projects are broken down, and this is really my main point of this presentation is the revenue replacement, the other, and then the health department. And so health department was approved to put kind of a fence around the 7.5 million, but also as they're spending down that 7.5 million, they'll be bringing things forward. So that's why we have approved, but then projects to date.
So did you include what we just talked about or what was approved?
Yes, and that was.
No, because it's not approved.
Okay.
But honestly, we thought that was gonna get pulled, so this was gonna help
Yeah.
that picture. We had significant discussion about the Crystal Lake Health Department project and whether we were approving 2.5 million or whether we were approving
Yes.
250,000 for an architectural study. And I think we really were zeroing in on the $250,000 for the architectural study, but I wanted to, and I think Carrie wanted to show that of that 7.5 million for the health department, that's not 7.5 million that we can spend on whatever we want. We've already exceeded, in a sense, what we can spend on wherever we want. Those are the revenue replacement dollars. We need to keep those expenses in that health arena and being responsive to the impacts of COVID. And so those dollars aren't free to just do whatever we want with.
And I think that's the important, if you go to page 3 where it has the description of all the projects, so the category, the expenditure category, those are US Treasury expenditure categories. And this is what Bronner really helps us to stay focused on. So per the US Treasury rules, we can only spend a certain amount on revenue replacement. So that's why we have this as a separate little circle. And this 20 million has exceeded the amount that we are eligible to spend on revenue replacement projects. So that's why anything going forward is really, I mean, we wouldn't even present anything to you guys for revenue replacement, but we need to stay focused on putting it into these other categories that you see below that can trace back directly to the pandemic or prevention for going forward.
So, to clarify, the 7.5 million, that's what we were supposed to be able to use for revenue replacement?
No, so of the 30, of the total distribution, we have about 15 million that we can use for revenue replacement there's a formula for the US Treasury. So the 7.5 million for the health department, none of that will fall into revenue.
I was just like, so 15 million, so there's about 5 million, do we have to recategorize?
Yeah, we're gonna get creative.
So,
Yeah, recategorize, that's a good way to.
yeah, recategorize.
Reevaluate.
We'll work with Ron.
Yes. But I think that's an important thing to keep in the back of your mind is not only do we have some money available, but the money that is remaining needs to be spent on a category other than revenue replacement. And so that's why we're working with Bronner now, talking about the election center. We think we can get it into a category that's not a revenue replacement. So it's a little bit of, then that relieves some pressure on the general fund for other.
So is that election center in that 20 million?
No.
So if we knew that revenue replacement was a fixed number based on a percentage of the total ARPA award, which is what I'm hearing it was or should have been. So how did we blow through that?
It's not a fixed percentage of the total ARPA award. Formula
It's a
of
formula.
our impacts,
Yes.
and it worked out to be about 15.
So we inherited the $20 million, Carrie and I. So I don't know if when the projects were presented for you guys to vote on, if there wasn't clear guidelines yet on the amounts, or if there was tracking, I don't know, could have been tracked better.
That's fine, I'm just trying to understand.
Yes,
I'm not trying to throw darts or anything.
Well,
I'm just trying to.
it's a good point. So we're kind of just, I guess, waiting to see if something will change with the US Treasury.
Yeah, and I've been in conversations with Bronner to kind of start looking at the projects that we have done as revenue replacement to see if there's any way we can tie them into some of these other categories to relieve some of that. So we are gonna start working on that. But we just don't know yet.
Well, and that's fine, I mean, I appreciate you looking at this now versus 2 years from now, I mean, because we need to get that solidified so that we're in compliance.
Right. But I think that's kind of the point of, this to see the whole picture, but then also that there's no more revenue replacement projects going forward.
That's the
key,
most important.
Yeah.
We can't buy squad cars or anything like that anymore.
Or software
Or anything.
Yeah, and we haven't in the last year. So there have been no projects for revenue replacement in the last year.
So what, I guess, can you clarify with Bronner if in fact we are over, we end up being over, because we can't modify or whatever, what is the steps that we're gonna be taking to rectify that situation? Is it simply requesting from the government that they modify the formula, or is it, like a waiver, or I mean, or do we, I mean, I don't want to go down that road till I really understand what the ramifications are of that outcome.
Yeah, I have talked to them a little bit, and I think they don't understand it all yet either because things change all the time. So it is something that we are staying on top of.
Okay.
And as soon as we know, we'll let you know.
Okay. Well, let's let them finish doing that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that was it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I had asked Carrie Johnson via email after she sent out the handout, how are we deciding things are on track? So I picked on one, in the email, I don't know if I should pick on it publicly, saying that I would expect some of the projects that are at a certain percentage spent should be considered not on track if they're not to a level that this committee initially intended when they heard the project. So projects, for instance, that were supposed to be split over the years from the time we approved it to 26, I would like to see a certain ratio meet. So the project, in my mind, had a 4 years to work on. They've only spent 6%. And I would have liked to see more than a quarter of that used. And so Carrie's response to me was that, she speaks with the people, and it was determined, I suppose I could let you say what you said to me. Or I could read it here, either way, yes. Yes.
So I am in contact with all of the subrecipients. Some of them, from when they were originally approved, the timeline has changed a little bit because there have been things that have come up. For example, the one that you had asked about, the approval process and onboarding took longer than was originally anticipated. So their budget had to be adjusted. So their first year, the spending went down because the program had already begun. So they had to find, they used other funds that they originally anticipated using ARPA funds to do their program over the summer. But they adjusted the other years going forward to be using more ARPA funds for it, and it's still the same project, they're just putting more ARPA towards it for the years than they originally anticipated because of the delay in the first year. Does that make sense?
Well, I might add to that too. I mean, I can understand that, and if it were like maybe a building where you have that steady progress, but when you're talking about, programs, people, whether or not you can recruit the people that you thought you needed for the program, it becomes more variable. So I think just like the steady track of completion isn't going to be there if it's something more fluid like this. So I like the fact that you're at least in touch with them and talking to them about what's going on, where are they, what were some of the challenges?
Yeah.
Because that's going to give us a heads up about whether or not, okay, maybe they're not going to meet this when in talking to them. Are they going to be able to get that up again next year? So I do appreciate the fact that you've been reaching out and doing that.
And the other thing that we do, they do have to revise their budget. So then that's reviewed by us and Bronner as well to make sure that it's still in line with the project that was approved and that it's still meeting, the requirements that we have set for them. So some of them, like that one, is a little bit harder because it is a program, it's not a building. But then, like some of the other ones where it was a more defined project, like a building, they're just gonna build a building. There's one that is delayed. It was already supposed to be built, but it's starting later because they had some internal issues, but it's almost done now and will be open at the end of the fall of 2024. So for me, that's still on track because they're still getting the project done. So I guess when I say on track is like, as of right now, it still looks like they're going to spend their money on the project that they're supposed to, and it's going forward.
Can you remind me how long, because the dates changed on us. We originally had to allocate everything by this December, and now the movement.
So we're still supposed to have everything allocated by December 31st, 2024, but they updated the final rules so that if something that is allocated after that is not going through, we can reallocate it.
Yeah, that was the question that I had asked.
Right, because like there's one that I'm picking on, and if you guys have really good memories, you'll know who I'm picking on. I never believed they could use the money. I didn't want to really approve them in the first place. Right.
So since it's already been allocated,
Yeah.
after December of this year, we can reallocate it.
Yeah, if they're like, so if after next summer, if it's not going how it should be going, because it should be a full thing and it should fit the budget, then we can look at it and reallocate it because it's already been
I mean, there might be other ones here that I should also be picking on, I just don't remember them as clearly as who I should be picking on.
Well, and I guess my only comment to your statement is, I don't look at the percentages because things like the ambulance, until they get the ambulance,
Yes.
you can't get reimbursement because it's a reimbursable program, so.
Right, yeah,
it's
not
gonna
right,
be-
yeah.
It's
right.
gonna stay 0 until they actually get it, and that's gonna go from 0 to 100. I mean,
Right.
it's a.
Another thing is, some of these, they're not very good at submitting their reimbursements in a timely manner. Like, for example, the Harvard Senior Tech Connect. We just started getting reimbursements, and I've been talking to her, she just hasn't had the staff to help her. So I'm getting stuff from 2022 right now. So they're not good at that, all of them.
They have to be.
Right. They should, I mean, it would help, and they're getting better. I'm staying on top of it and in communication with them and trying to help them under, and meeting with them. So we're getting there, but I can't do it for them.
Right. What's going on with the McHenry building that we put, I think it was 800,000 we ended up putting towards that? I'm sure it's on the list here somewhere.
Yeah, so they are,
Taylor Apartments.
Yeah,
The
that
housing.
they didn't get the
They did
state, they did get the state stuff
did.
finally?
yes, so they're gonna start moving forward.
I think we may be breaking ground
Wow.
late spring.
So their project didn't change, it just finally got the state side of the whatever funding round they finally got their stuff into, okay. And the one in Woodstock, my understanding is already going forward.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Just wondering if there's any here in particular, I don't know if you can say it out loud, that you have concerns about.
So there's one with speaking with everybody, I mean, we can say it, right?
Yeah.
So one of the projects, Rosecrans, their program is doing better than anticipated, so they are creating more revenue than they thought they would. So they have not been able to use as much of the ARPA money, so they are trying to look at their program to see if there's anything else that they could add to it, staying within what was approved. Otherwise, we may have to reallocate those funds.
That's a great problem.
Right. It's doing really well.
I
So,
was thinking the opposite kind of problem, that there's a project that wouldn't go through.
yeah, no, so far, everything is, I mean, when I've spoke to people, everything starts to, is either starting or anything that's been delayed, it's like it's starting to move forward finally. So, like New Directions, they were delayed a little bit because they were looking for land. They purchased the land, so they're gonna start doing their building. So everything is starting to finally fall into place, it seems like.
I have a question. I don't know if this is the appropriate area for it. I did want to pull 7.10, but I did have just 2 clarifications. And so is this a good place to ask it? Okay. So this that we just passed was for the $250,000 for the design of the facility out of the $2.45 million for the entire project.
So the one that you guys just approved was the original resolution of the 2.5.
Right, but just identifying the design portion of it. There was something crossed out in there. Well, I should have.
So did you guys?
I should have pulled it, but just explain it, Carter.
Yeah, there was a resolution prepared to amend that, to make it specifically on the 250,000. Thought that would maybe create some ease. There appeared to be some tension at PHS that there was an approval of the entire 2.5 million. So we thought, well, what we really wanted was to green light on the design.
Yes.
To make more concrete decisions about the whole 2.5. That was not.
And so that's what.
We could go back and amend it, I suppose, if you wanted, but that's, the intent is just a green light on the design.
Okay, so that's what we passed this morning, right?
You passed it as presented at PHCS. It was not amended.
Not the,
So not
So you're telling me
Not the red
that
line, not the handout?
what was approved at PHCS?
The 2.5 million.
The 2.454295?
Yep, for our.
That's what was approved at PHCS.
So this is not what was in our, really?
That was, there was no discussion about modifying at PHCS, so we just had this ready in case there was discussion on modifying it.
Okay, I picked this up and thought that it was in this, and I just, when you mentioned Pat, just looked at that, and did anybody else pick this up and think this is what we were voting on? Okay,
Fortunately, I did, because I never looked at it on this part,
yeah,
but,
I mean, I did listen to the public health discussion about this, but I did not read this while we were in the
It's
meeting.
not
I
going to
didn't read
change
this.
how they operate.
I just thought that this superseded what was in the agenda.
But this would only supersede if we actually pulled it and said it superseded it. It wouldn't just automatically go through.
So we'll just
This
have to
would-
discuss this at the cow? Okay, we just pull it at the cow?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's not going to change how we move ahead. I thought that the amended version might give some people more comfort. But
It's
it's
still-
not going to change for a moment how we move ahead on this project.
Sure, okay.
Well, like you said, we need to allocate money, ARPA money to projects instead of revenue replacement, so this would be a good.
Well, but this is, so the only thing that's come forward right now is the design portion, as far as,
We haven't even brought that contract yet.
Right, that will come forward. So this is kind of like, the way I think of it is fencing off a subset of the fenced off for
right,
this project.
right,
Then we're gonna bring the design forward with a cost that you'd have to approve.
yep,
Then they're going to help us budget for the project as a whole. Then we are
Actual work.
going to have to bring that forward. So this is not like a blank check to just move forward. There's gonna be discussion about, we don't even know if all the things that we would like to change can be done. That's where the first step is going to be contracting with that architectural and engineering firm
So
for
this
this
is,
design services.
so this is just saying this money that's in this resolution is being, we're agreeing that we're gonna have that fund the modifications
Yeah,
going
so-
forward. And you're gonna bring forward in pieces what the
Correct.
different costs that are
We
associated
can't
with.
move forward without you approving those contracts. But we were tasked, I think, by the end of last year to complete a plan, right? So this is part of that full plan for the 7.5 million. And so we want to earmark this for this project. What it's actually going to come out, we don't know yet, but our intent is to stay within that budget. If that makes more
So-
sense.
I guess, so Melissa, I guess what I'm a little confused is why such an odd number? Why wouldn't you just come up with like 2.5 million if
Oh.
that's?
You know, we worked with facilities and that's just how it shook out. You know, we itemized all these things, so it is just an estimate based on square footage, based on,
Okay.
yeah, these were not numbers
Well,
that.
and so this is why you get board members to be like, well, this is a specific dollar amount, you know, so they're not thinking what you just verbalized.
Yeah, and, you know, I have not had to do this type of resolution before, so I don't think I understood that there was maybe an alternate way. It wasn't even, it didn't really get discussed, I don't think, so we just brought it forward the way we had been discussing it. But all along, the intent was to bring, you know, find an architectural and engineering firm, bring that contract to you,
So-
then go to step 2.
Okay, so I would recommend, you know, either sending an email or some way communicating with the board before our committee of the whole exactly what you said, so that they have a full understanding
Okay.
of this
steps or the
resolution and
intent.
the steps
Okay, sure.
that, yes.
And, well, 'cause, oh, go ahead. Well, I was just gonna say, because we need to understand that this is what the total estimated cost is, so that we do wanna have some agreement with that, we're okay with that, so that they can start the process.
Right, and
So
I think that
making
was,
sure-
right, because if you don't
That's well stated.
conceptually agree with this, then that's a lot of money that we're gonna have to potentially rethink what other projects would we want to try to tackle? But that one has been on the list really from the beginning.
It has been.
Right. And it's something that's needed, I personally think, based on the
Well, and I know some people invited people to come see the facility, and I extend that invitation because those who maybe are wondering, you know, is this a good use of funds, might want to come visit and see what the conditions are right now.
the challenges.
Yes, the challenges.
Page 73, sorry.
There you go.
Page 73 breaks out the estimated cost, that's why there's an odd number
Page 73.
of our packet.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, so we provided that though after, you know, between public health and today.
What's
And
page?
this resolution is necessary right now? It's necessary for us to,
Well,
is it
my
a
understanding on
formality
the
or is it a
time,
necessity?
well, I think to stay on track and get a final dollar amount to appropriate these dollars by the end of this year, my understanding is yes, we have to start moving these things forward, working with facilities and working with purchasing because it takes that long to get this kind of thing accomplished.
And then, I'd love to ask this privately, but I'm just gonna ask it now. We have to justify these things for ARPA funds, so we have to tie them to the act. So when we have verbiage about 6-foot distancing, vaccinations, pandemic, those are to meet the qualifications. Thank you, got it, okay.
Okay, is there any other discussion on ARPA? Yes?
sorry.
One more.
So in general, when we look at this, we still have 1.9 to appropriate for FOIA projects and 1.1 for county projects. When do we think we're gonna see applications for that come to finance?
So
We're no more applications.
Yeah, I'm not anticipating opening up more applications. I think as we move through the year,
Yeah.
we'll see how some of these projects come in to do. Remember, we have a big question on fiber that's out there.
We do,
And-
yeah.
And what we might need to help on that.
And there are some existing projects that were underfunded.
Right.
Right.
So maybe we would
Yeah, we
revisit
have
that.
a lot of the capital.
Capital, remind
We do.
Yeah.
So I guess the question then is, when do we think we're going to talk about what we're going to do with this 1.9 and 1.1?
June, July?
Yeah, I would say probably July
July?
timeframe, August timeframe to
Okay.
kind of solidify things a little bit more.
Who's ready to go?
Well, a lot of the capital stuff was stuff that we just didn't fund because we didn't have as much dollars, which we could very easily, they don't have to come back and do presentations. We just finish the money.
Right. Okay.
And we're hoping the election center will take a chunk of that too. So we'll be able to use, that's what we're having reviewed right now.
Okay. Anything else on ARPA? Okay. 11.
Just one quick thing. Do you think this would be beneficial to send to the full board?
Heck yeah.
Okay. We will do that.
Hey, you're up. You're on 11.1.
Okay, so,
And
I
try
have
not
my
to steal your
list
thunder anymore.
I know, I was.
We are gonna do a more refined jail presentation next month.
Yes, so I met with Sandy, so what the plan is right now is to, once we start paying the invoices for things that are going up in direct correlation to the Lake County inmate population, which is primarily healthcare and food, we will come up with a number and then segregate that out in D365, so then we have a very clear revenue and expense. But really what I thought was most interesting in our discussion is it's just for now gonna be those things and no salaries. And so the last piece I think we need to talk about is transportation, but it's really gonna be a good net income based on the numbers we're getting. So we'll have that next month when everything's built out.
So the transportation and the personnel piece is something that you're gonna kind of try and figure out a little bit?
So personnel, I thought, was interesting when we talked, because I know like with the Safety Act, when the population went down, I just thought it was a good, I don't know if trust is the right word, that, you know, they said, based on their ratios and staffing levels, that they couldn't, you know, we think like less inmates, less staff.
No, there's a fixed amount of
Yes.
staff you have to have there,
And
whether you have
so,
1 or 100.
Adding these Lake County inmates, right now, there is no increase in staffing.
So our average daily population when the Safety Act took place, I mean, immediately took a little dive. So we went down to like 154. We're now back up to 194, right around pre-Safety Act. If it stays here, we'll probably be able to manage within the staff. If the general population goes up, and we're not gonna have knee-jerk reactions, because now people are being served with their third warning and being brought in, so there may be an uptick, but we gotta wait and see what it's gonna look like when it levels out.
You mean they're not returning to?
They are not coming back.
Oh, imagine that.
Right away.
Yeah,
So
so we just get to go find them again and bring them back again.
So it's 194 with your general, like,
correct,
for here. And then what were we at with the,
150
from them?
from Lake County. It's been pretty consistent, so the transportation part is essentially bringing them to court. If there is any switch, you know, we'll go down to 148 for a night, and then the next day it's back to 150.
And the way that was, if I remember right, isn't that incorporated into the cost per inmate that you are providing that daily service?
Yes.
Okay, because it's just a one and done, right? You go out, you pick them up, you bring them out, and then one.
Correct.
In mass.
In mass,
Yeah.
right, it's not
Right.
singular. Okay.
And that 194 is just our inmates, not
That's just
including
general.
Lake.
So it is not including Lake.
So what is, so that's, what, 1, 2, 3, 350, what's the full capacity? I know you've mentioned.
650.
650.
So we have that agreement with Keene County, which we don't anticipate using that yet. Great Lakes Naval Base has reached out, they're interested. We used to have the Great Lakes Naval Base contract. They went back out to bid and went to Lake County, but obviously now Lake County is saying you better call McHenry County. But they're federal, so that's gonna take a little longer. Maybe 1 or 2 inmates per month from them is what that would mean.
Okay.
Minimal.
So the Great Lakes, are those military prisoners?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Do you have other?
It'll be a good report next month.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, I'm
it'll be
looking
more
forward to it.
comprehensive, and you know, hopefully
Numbers.
you'll have it ahead of time so that you can review it and then come in with questions.
Great.
And then in the next few weeks, I will be submitting the '24 budget for GFOA. And I'll have it out on ClearGov. It's a slow process. We're getting there.
Okay.
That's it. And then the audit, the ever ongoing audit, but, and I feel like I have the same thing every month, but really like our audit is like a 6-month process, so they'll be out on, for the final audit in March.
Okay. Do you anticipate them being here May? June?
Our goal is to have everything finalized by the end of June, which is, I mean, it used to be, we were closer to May, but, you know, for several years, it was August, September. So, you know, we're starting with June, and we'll go from there. I think that's a good improvement.
But that means that they won't be
They
here.
will be here July, beginning of July.
Right. All right. And any more on our dashboard?
Dashboard for the quarterly?
Well, yes.
I do not have an update for you.
Okay, that's fine. Any other questions for Carrie? All right, on to 11.3 EDC. What?
No, yeah, I was gonna say, you're it. For reporting on it, that we didn't have anybody else in the room, so you were.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you meant for Carrie.
No.
No. So EDC, we had a special full board meeting last week to share with the full board all the things that have been going on. We've made a couple of tweaks, so the full board will be meeting every month now to get them more involved, and we're gonna restart up committees again so that work can be ongoing as far as getting the organization back healthy again. There was actually a lot of excitement by the board members. Many of them commented that's the best board meeting they've been to since they've been on the board. So I think they're energized with the direction that the EDC is going. We have not started talking about a lead position, which we don't know will be president or executive director. We haven't figured out what the title of it is, but we're trying to lay all the groundwork so that we have a better understanding of what we're actually looking for. Because that's part of the problem. Without having a clear vision as to where we're going, it's hard to try and find a leader that will take you that direction without knowing what that is. So that's why the board's meeting more often to try and work through everything and get that back on target again. I would hope that we should be able to move forward with that probably in March, would be my anticipation. And then we'll advertise it and put it out there as far as what we're going on. We've had a lot of discussions with Pete and Mike Bueller about the relationship with the full county board as far as not only our contract, which comes up due at the end of this year, so it's a perfect opportunity to try and reimagine what that contract should look like and what that relationship should look like. MCC, who's always been a partner, is excited about looking at ways that we can work better together. And naturally, they're a key part of what we do because they're the engine behind all of the educational support that companies need as far as staff goes, and manufacturing needs as far as being able to get staff to run their machines and stuff. So that partnership is on a much better projection, which is great. We're looking at expanding the board, adding more new members to the board, where we're at the minimum that we are required to have by the bylaws, and we all feel that more people would bring more thought process and better responsiveness to the community's needs. So we're looking at expanding that. And is there anything else I'm missing?
What's the size of the board currently?
We are at 14.
And then what's the max that you can go to?
I think 21. I'm trying to remember from the bylaws.
Okay.
I think it's 21.
Okay.
It's supposed to be an odd number.
Okay.
Which I don't know why the bylaws say it's an odd number. Whatever.
Do you guys, are you working at all with Workforce Network? Because they have all those labor statistics and they kind of have a feel of what's going on with the labor demands and employment demands in the county?
They come to our board meetings, yeah. I mean, they weren't at the last one, but typically speaking, they come to our board meetings, yes. Did I miss anything in terms?
No, you had a very long meeting. I was part of only about half of it. It went about 2.5 hours. Chairman Bueller sat in as well, not as a voting member, but just keeping in touch. And both Mike and Mike thought it was a very constructive and healthy meetings. And you have another one Tuesday.
Yep. Yep. Any questions? No? Okay. National McHenry County, any report for that? Okay. We don't have a need for an executive session, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:12.